Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning in strong support of the rule for the flood insurance reform, strong support of the underlying legislation. I'd like to applaud the sponsor of H.R. 5114, Chairwoman Maxine Waters, for her leadership in bringing this important bill to the floor. And I commend Chairman Frank and Ranking Member Baucus for being open to a number of improvements to this bill from myself and my fellow members. I am grateful for their longstanding advocacy of my legislation, H.R. 1525, which is incorporated into the underlying bill before us today. Both of them and their incredible staffs have been valuable in this process. Mr. Speaker, it is critical that our constituents have access to a stable flood insurance program. Toward that end, H.R. 5114, which I am pleased to co-sponsor, would reauthorize the National Flood Insurance Program for 5 years and implement necessary changes that are essential for its continuing viability. Floods have been and continue to be one of the most destructive and costly natural hazards to my hometown of Sacramento and to other communities throughout the country. The NFIP is a valuable tool in addressing the losses incurred due to these disasters and mitigating against future disasters. The program ensures that families have access to affordable flood insurance while making certain that their safety is protected. In fact, the NFIP is a primary source of reliable, affordable flood insurance in this country, providing 95% of the flood insurance policies nationwide. It covers 5.6 million households and insures $1.2 trillion in property. From the Sacramento region to the Louisiana Bayou to the plains of the Midwest, communities are improving their flood protection infrastructure in order to keep residents safe and secure. However, as we work to provide certainty to our recovering housing market, these communities are seeking clarity to meet the changing dynamics of federal standards. It is for these reasons that I'm thrilled that this legislation contains a provision I authored that would provide technical changes to federal flood zone designations. In my district, the deepest flood depths would be in a region called the Natomas Basin. Fortunately, we have a flood protection project underway to achieve a 200-year level of protection for its residents. By 2011, the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency and the state of California will have spent upwards of $350 million repairing levees in the Natomas Basin. But over the last 5 years, hundreds of millions devoted to levee improvements in Natomas have not been acknowledged by FEMA in the remapping process. Unfortunately, FEMA's current flood zone certification process does not always take local and state funding into account. A year ago, I introduced H.R. 1525, which would fix this problem, and it has been included in the bill we are considering today. In addition to making flood insurance available to millions of Americans, this bill also provides communities clarity in order for them to continue their ongoing efforts to improve flood defenses. It would update current law to take local, state, and federal funding into account when determining flood zone designations. Such investments must be recognized by the federal government. Local communities, states, and the federal government must all be thoughtful and committed partners because protecting our constituents from the danger potential floods pose requires a comprehensive approach. While I have always urged homeowners in floodplains to purchase flood insurance, I have serious concerns about families being forced to incur higher insurance rates during an economic recession. Increased rates on top of the annual flood protection assessments that many residents are paying each year compounds this problem, which is why I'm grateful that H.R. 5114 includes another provision I strongly support that will reduce the shock of higher insurance rates by phasing them in over 5 years. It would apply retroactively to September 2008 to areas that have been already remapped. Most importantly, for the thousands of homeowners across the country that have recently gone through the remapping process, H.R. 5114 would lower their flood insurance rates. Without this bill, many of our constituents would likely be forced to pay more than 4 times the preferred risk policy rate. Mr. Speaker, the Flood Insurance Reform Priorities Act was unanimously approved by the Financial Services Committee on April 27, 2010. It is budget neutral and is supported by numerous organizations in the property insurance field. Congress has not reauthorized NFIP since 2004. It is time for us to do so and to make a program to ensure its sustainability. As many of my colleagues can attest, providing for the security and safety of flood-prone regions like the one I represent needs to be at the top of our priority list. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to be part of the solution and to help make sure residents of Sacramento and other flood-prone communities across the country so they can afford to purchase the flood insurance they need to protect their families, their businesses, and the livelihoods of our communities. I therefore urge my colleagues to support the rule and the underlying legislation, and I reserve the balance of